More thoughts on this ever-turning quarterback battle and it's report card day. We've got some PFF grades for everyone, and shout out to the defense. They actually played pretty well against Rutgers. We'll get into all of that and more. That's coming up on the Locked On Syracuse podcast.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome on in to the Locked On Syracuse podcast, and happy Wednesday to everyone. Check us out on Twitter at @LO_Syracuse. You can also find the show on YouTube now. If you are new to the show, hit that subscribe button. Even if you're not new to the show, find us on YouTube. Maybe you're subscribed to us on Apple and Spotify. Guess what? You can do both. You can do both because we're going to have some fun stuff on our YouTube channel throughout the season and all that fun stuff as well. Tyler Aki alongside Tim Leonard. All right, Tim, there's so much still ongoing with the quarterback battle. Dino says he wants to see someone grab this thing by the reins. We still haven't seen anyone do that. I don't think Garrett Shrader has necessarily been given ample opportunity to do so, but even in his limited time on the field, I have not been wowed with what I've seen.
No.
And we put out a poll on our Twitter account. How should Syracuse approach this quarterback battle? Should it A, be Tommy DeVito? Should it B, be Garrett Shrader? Or C, does it not matter at this point because the offensive line has been so terrible?
I mean, I'm sort of all for starting Garrett Shrader against Albany, and that's just from a standpoint of I'm tired of watching Tommy DeVito. I'm tired of watching the stale offense. To keep me invested, to keep me interested, I want to see the alternative. I want to make sure that we give that a fair shot. Now, I will admit that what I saw from Garrett Shrader was not good, and I think anyone that thinks he was good the other day is just blinded by the fact that they hate Tommy DeVito so much and they just desperately want him to be good. He wasn't good.
I saw a drive against prevent defense.
Yes, and look, maybe you can make the case that he just needed to get into a rhythm. He hasn't played quarterback in a while, and I think that's all fair. That's why I'm urging Dino to start him again and give him another chance. I think he definitely needs another chance. It is also worth noting, if you do start him against Albany, and he's going to play against Albany in some regard, we're probably going to see a really good Garrett Shrader against Albany, and we shouldn't overreact to that as well.
Right, and I don't think any sort of reaction or judgment should come from the Albany game. Whether Tommy DeVito goes out and goes 20 for 25 with 3 touchdowns and 280-something yards, I don't think that wins him the starting job against Albany. And if Garrett Shrader goes out and puts together a drive of, I don't know, let's say he goes 13 for 25 and has 110 yards and 2 interceptions. I don't think that necessarily should determine it. Now, I will say I would be a little more concerned if that is the output that we get from Shrader. It's almost like what we always joke about in golf, right, Tim? You can't win this competition in the Albany game, but maybe you could lose it in this Albany game. You can't win a major on Thursday, but you can certainly knock yourself out of contention on Thursday.
Yeah, and it seems that the guys we bet on seem to do that quite a bit on Thursday, unfortunately.
You get a lot of missed cuts, yeah.
Yeah, but no, I totally agree. That's a good analogy there because for Shrader, there's a lot to gain in this game. I mean, I think for him, it seemed like he didn't have a lot of confidence when he first got out there. It was a tough situation. He's backed up near the end zone. He just didn't look like he was processing things quick enough. And then I think he got rattled, quite frankly, and he hadn't been playing in a while, and it's probably reasonable to expect that. Rutgers is a pretty good defense. Maybe he gets an opportunity against Albany to just get some confidence under him and start to get into more of a rhythm. And that's why if you do play him, just for the love of God, play him for like at least 3 drives, 4 drives. I'd like to see him out there for an entire half, ideally. And I liked how you brought it up yesterday. Treat this like a preseason game. Maybe you start with DeVito. I don't really care. You're probably going to win regardless of who starts the game. And I say that, I mean, I guess Florida State
regardless of who plays in general. Yeah. And
right.
Florida State's next on your schedule after Albany, too.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, and I think Liberty's in there at some point. So it's interesting to see how Dino handles this. But the bottom line is whoever starts is probably going to win this game. It doesn't really matter too much. So let's start DeVito for a half, and then let's give Schrader a half, and let's compare and contrast what they did.
Yeah, I want to see flow. I think that's what it comes down to. I want to see each of these quarterbacks when given the chance to get some rhythm and flow. And we've seen what Tommy can do. And I think a lot of the criticism is right. I think we have seen the best of Tommy DeVito. What you're getting right now, I don't think it's going to get better. And part of that, I think, is because of what the offensive line brings. I said it yesterday. I frankly don't think it matters who starts at quarterback. I think the quarterbacks themselves, probably about even. I think Garrett Schrader's arm looked a little bit stronger than I thought it was going to be as advertised in that loss against Rutgers. And then conversely, I think Tommy DeVito's looked like a much better runner than what's been advertised out of him from what I've seen out of him in the win against Ohio and the loss to Rutgers. So between those two factors, I don't know exactly if there is a correct answer. There might not be a correct answer. This team might be better off just throwing whoever out there and keeping it situational. But again, that's a tough way to get your team going with flow and getting your quarterback in a rhythm. I just don't think this team is set up for success given the struggles on the offensive line. It is that bad right now.
Yeah, and it's getting more and more like it's hard to argue against that now because we've seen Tommy DeVito several years now struggle with this. We've seen now another 4-star quarterback come in who, yes, we've only seen for like 3 series. So I'm not going to overreact. Like, obviously, we have to be fair to Garrett Schrader. He's got plenty of time to prove that he can be the guy, and hopefully he gets that opportunity. But as we've talked about, like maybe this offense, the offensive line, the complexity of this veer and shoot scheme is just not designed for a quarterback to succeed against Power 5 competition. And maybe if you don't have the offensive line clicking like they have at times, and you don't have an Eric Dungy back there, you're in really deep trouble because, I don't know, it feels like Zach Mahoney was forever ago. Like, how did we score 50 some odd points some games? Or we scored what against Pitt? 63 points in that game?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. It was some basketball score.
Records were broken. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and our whole thing in the first 3 years, I guess up until Dungy left, it made sense that we had an offensive-minded coach. Since then, we tried a new offensive coordinator. We tried a new offensive line coach. We've thrown stuff at the wall here, and it doesn't matter who's back there. It doesn't matter who's at wide receiver. It doesn't matter who we're playing, I guess with the exception of Ohio, who clearly is not very good because they just lost to Duquesne, who they were big favorites over. It doesn't matter. Like, we're just not producing on offense regardless, and the main constant there is probably the offensive line struggling.
One of the things that's frustrating to me, and you bring up Zach Mahoney, and I think that's just a further building evidence of it, is we saw Zach Mahoney come in on a whim at times and look good in this offense. We saw Clayton Welch at times come in on a whim, look good in the offense. I mean, let's look at, okay, people say, oh, well, he hadn't played a game in 2 years. Mackenzie Milton hadn't played a game in 2 years and came in and nearly led a comeback winning drive. Well, he did lead a game tying drive and nearly won a game against Notre Dame. And he hadn't played in 2 years. So for him, and he went through a devastating injury as opposed to just getting flat out benched. And you think about someone who's looking for confidence there. And it's not like Garrett Schrader's some 3-star scrub, 2-star scrub. Garrett Schrader is a once upon a time 4-star guy who had been getting looks from Alabama and Florida and some of the SEC powers, played in the SEC. So he should be further along just from a mental standpoint, you'd imagine. And just to see him go out and play as flat as he did in that opener, I mean, the first 2 drives, he had -3 yards total. That you should not have that. You should at least be falling forward at times.
I guess what I'm arguing here is that at the start of the season, preseason, we did all these podcasts predicting what was going to happen for Syracuse. And my thesis was, all right, the offensive line has been really holding us back the past couple years. And if we get the offensive line right, then maybe we have a chance to be competitive in the ACC. I don't think the offensive line is right. Don't get me wrong. They haven't really been good. I mean, that would be too much to say that. But at the same time, they've been a little bit better, and maybe we're just realizing that the coaching is the bigger issue. And the fact that if you aren't able to get anything out of 2 4-star QBs back there, a great running back in Sean Tucker, Taj Harris, an all-ACC wide receiver, on the offensive side of the ball, Luke Benson, an elite pass catcher that could be a special playmaker at the tight end position. they do have some weapons, and they're going up against Rutgers at home, and they can't move the ball whatsoever.
Yeah. It reminds me, it's like there's the flathead screwdriver and the Phillips head screwdriver right now. And let's say you've got you need the Phillips. It feels like you're using the flathead at times, but you've got Luke Benson in your toolbox and you're just choosing not to use him right now, even though it would make life a lot easier for the rest of the offense. I don't get it. I really don't. Real quick break, and then we will get into some PFF grades for the offense, maybe a few leftover quarterback thoughts as well. But hey, we're back and better than ever. All eyes on the gridiron as teams are back to start another football season. And as always, BetOnline, your number one spot for all the pro and college action this season. With new updated site and interface, even more odds, props, and contests, BetOnline.ag continues to be the number one source for everything football and what Tim and I use to get in all of our weekend and weekday wagers. Head to the website or use your phone to sign up today to receive your 100% welcome bonus. That's double your initial deposit just for signing up. And don't forget to use promo code NFL100 from football, basketball, boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. It's BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts, and use our promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Okay, so the PFF stuff is out. It wasn't very endearing to this offense. It was pretty nice for the defense, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. But I've got a list here of the bottom 5 of PFF grades. Do you know how many are offense? Can you take a stab at that?
Well, I did glance at this, and I saw Luke Benson's down there. I would guess all 5 are offense off the top of my head. Maybe Rob Hanna's down there.
Adrian Cole makes the list of the bottom 5.
Which honestly, he was fine. He just wasn't out there that long to really get a proper grade, in my opinion. I mean, he wasn't bad.
Yeah, he kind of had like some spot appearances, it felt like. But yeah,
right.
I take more from I see Luke Benson, Anthony Quealy, Darius Tisdale, and Garrett Schrader on this list than I do from seeing Adrian Cole.
Yeah,
I didn't see any sort of plays in this game. Rutgers didn't have enough big plays for me to warrant a defensive player on this. And again, Pro Football Focus, it's just one of the tools in the football toolbox. I have my eyes. I've got PFF. I've got box scores. You should have an all-encompassing mind when it comes to evaluating games. But I do think when you look at Luke Benson, he had the penalty. He whiffed on a couple blocks. It was not a good game for Luke Benson. Anthony Quealy, I believe he had a couple drops in this game. Darius Tisdale just got flattened every single time the ball was snapped, it felt like. There was a lot to not like from this list. Garrett Schrader made a lot of turnover-worthy plays, even though he didn't actually cough the ball up. There's a lot to not like from this list. And seeing the bottom 5 with all of these Syracuse offensive players, I feel like it was a microcosm of the game.
Yeah, Luke Benson, we've talked about this ad nauseum, but it really is like if he was in a band and he's just some elite guitar player and Dino's walking up to him before the games and he's like, oh, I know you're really good at guitar, but actually we're going to stick you over there at drums today. Like, we're not going to use your strength whatsoever. We're just going to throw you on the drums and we're going to make you block the entire game and never throw you the ball. That's how I feel about it. So as much as I'm disappointed in how he started the season and the penalty was boneheaded, like that also comes back to coaching a little bit on, in the case of him. For the quarterbacks, you mentioned Schrader. His grade was really low. What was it, like 42, 43? Something in that range.
3.6 was the final.
Okay, so he had 16 snaps, 43 grade, not good. 2 turnover-worthy plays, which we talked about a little bit yesterday. DeVito was a 54 grade, and that's one of the worst grades I've seen for him, really, in a serious game.
PFF is usually A, kind to quarterbacks, and B, specifically kind to Tommy DeVito.
Yeah. So if you go off those numbers, you really thought, okay, maybe he's going to have a breakout year this year if he gets the offensive line right. Here's the weird thing about his grade. 40.9 grade when he was under pressure, DeVito, and he was pressured on 7 of his 30 dropbacks, according to PFF. But his non-pressure throws, a 62.3 grade, still not good. Usually he's like 80s on non-pressure, and he's really bad against pressure, and we talked about that. But that's concerning. I think a lot of that came in the second half when he just got really rattled and they were down and he was pressing a little bit.
I just, with DeVito, And I'd love to see the numbers of pressures for both of these guys, because it felt like, yes, the pressure was there, but it was 4-man pressure every single time. These receivers did not help out Tommy or Garrett in any sort of regard. And Dino alluded to that in his press conference on Monday, saying, hey, like, there was one point where we needed a receiver to make a decision while Garrett was in there, and the decision just never came. So I don't know, is that too complex of an offense? Is it your receivers aren't up to snuff for what Dino's doing? Maybe this is simple stuff, and Dino is not to blame on some of it, but these receivers are not good enough. Just flat out, these receivers are not good enough. You have one quality receiver on your team right now. And when you have these coverages that break down in 2 seconds, well, you're not going to – I don't care if you run a 4-4, a 4-3. You can't get down 40 yards in 2 seconds, okay? So your speed kind of becomes moot at a point, and you're not getting this separation. You're not doing what the route trees are asking you to do. You're not making these sort of decisions. The receiving really has been a major disappointment. I don't feel like people are giving it enough credit for how bad it has been.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I really noticed that in particular in this game. And just to give some more numbers and context on how often each quarterback was pressured here, good stat from PFF on seconds they had to throw. Garrett Shrader had an average of 3.2 seconds to throw, which was actually half a second more than DeVito's average play. Now, it was a smaller sample size for Shrader. He was technically pressured on 8 of his 9 pass attempts, or dropbacks to pass, basically, where DeVito was only pressured on 7 of his 30 dropbacks. But I guess given that the time to throw was more for Shrader, that tells you that he was taking longer to get the ball out of his hands and was pressured because he was holding on to the ball a little bit longer. So for anyone that's saying, oh, like DeVito was holding on to the ball too long, Shrader's, technically speaking, based on stats, got the same problem in the limited sample size we've seen.
And listen, every college quarterback holds on to the ball too long. Every single one does, okay? It's just part of what they did in high school and even in college. You hold on to the ball because you let plays develop. The defensive backs aren't nearly as good. Why do you see a lot of rookie quarterbacks in the NFL get sacked? It's because they hold on to the ball a longer time, because in college, that play downfield would develop. I mean, I think of every Alabama quarterback. Think of how many times you've seen Jalen Waddle or Henry Ruggs or Devontae Smith flying down the field wide open because they got a couple steps on a guy. That takes time to develop. And that's why a guy like Jalen Hurts and Tua and Mac Jones, they hold on to the ball a little bit longer because they had that time in college. You don't always have that time. And a lot of these college quarterbacks, really across the board, like, you think about it, how many times do you see the type of touchdown in college happen in the NFL? And what I mean by that is the long bomb where the guy's wide open. It very rarely happens in the NFL. In college, it happens, and the product of that is because the quarterback can hold on to the ball a little bit longer and let those plays develop. All of these quarterbacks hold on, probably a little too long at times. And Garrett Shrader, to have that amount of time, and he was getting pressured. He was getting pressured against 4-man fronts. And to me, when you have 3.2, upwards of 3.3 seconds to throw every single time, and you're getting pressured on 8 of your 9 dropbacks, well, guess what? That's on the receivers for not getting open. That means you don't have talented enough receivers.
Right. You know, I was watching that Peyton and Eli Manning cast thing last night, which I'm sure everyone in America was watching and tweeting about.
That was very split. You either loved it or you hated it.
Which side were you on?
I liked it.
Oh, no.
I really liked it. Yeah.
Okay.
You didn't like it?
Yeah. No, I liked it. I thought it was interesting. And I thought Peyton said something interesting where he talked about how a quarterback can't be frustrated. If a quarterback's frustrated, that's a problem. If a running back's angry and they're running angry, that might be good. Wide receiver, same thing. Maybe they're working harder, running harder. But a quarterback, when you get frustrated, then you try and maybe just take a deep shot and try and get it all back in one play and start pressing. Mm-hmm. And when he said that, I was just like, ding, 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 Tommy DeVito. Like, it does feel like DeVito does that.
Once you
Yeah.
were explaining that right there, I was like, "Yep, he's about to make a Tommy parallel right here."
Right.
By the way, shout out
Because
to Tim Langlois, one of my former classmates. He was one of the producers on that. You actually may have heard
really,
his voice go over the air because of all the technical gaffes during that. But
yeah.
no. Shout out to Tim. He's fantastic. He's great at what he does.
Huh, that's cool. Yeah. Well, I enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting how low key the whole thing was. Like they go to break and just get cut off, and it was just truly like they were on a couch. So I'll be watching next week. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we come back, we'll get into some of the defensive stuff that we saw from PFF in this game because there was a lot to like there. There really was. This is a defense that I think passed a big test against Rutgers. So we'll dive into that in just a second. But first, did you know that Built Bar has 9 delicious flavors, including the occasional limited time flavor? When you talk to Built Bar fans like Tim and myself, we are always passionate about our favorites. We've been telling you for months now, get the peanut butter brownie. You will not find a better protein bar anywhere. You won't find a better bar anywhere. Candy bar, protein bar, whatever. You will not find a better one. There's something for everyone, whether you like the peanut butter brownie like Tim and I, whether you like fruit flavored. They all got chocolate on them as well, salted caramel. There's all these different flavors. Ours is the peanut butter brownie, as we've said. And if you haven't tried them all, you can get a mix box where you will get 2 of each of the 9 flavors. They're also super healthy for you. There are 17 grams of protein, only 130 calories, and 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs to go with that. So order today, get the peanut butter brownie, the raspberry, the mint brownie, or whatever you like. Go to BuiltBar.com, use the promo code LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your first order. Again, BuiltBar.com, promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off your next order.
Also want to remind you guys about Prize Picks, which is my new favorite daily fantasy site out there. It is super easy to use. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. Prize Picks is safe and offers fast withdrawals. And the really cool thing about this is they offer every single sport you can think of. They've got college football, college basketball when that comes back, MMA, soccer, MLB, NBA, NFL. If you want to bet on some Syracuse over-unders, this is the place to do it. You pick 2 to 5 players on an over-under of their projections, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry. And it's just you versus the projected numbers. You're not competing against anyone else. So it's you versus the numbers. And there are some pretty good lines out there where you can make some money. You can also do mixed sports entries, maybe take the over on LeBron combined with the under on Mahomes in the same entry and mix those together. So there's lots of different fun stuff you can do. All new users, use our promo code LOCKEDON. You'll receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Again, that promo code is LOCKEDON for 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Don't hesitate. Check out prizepicks.com or go to your app store and download the app today.
One last quarterback thing I want to get to, and that Manning thing sparked my memory on this.
Yeah.
I went back and watched the Garrett Schrader drives. They cut to Tommy DeVito a couple times on the sideline, and the look on his face was like, WTF, why is this guy in the game right now?
Yeah.
And, I mean, it kind of encapsulates what we've seen from Tommy throughout his career, where he's just consistently frustrated. And some of it's warranted, the offensive line play, all that stuff, but it just, I don't know, it rubbed me the wrong way. It did not look like a good teammate out there. It was like a stone cold WTF look. And
yeah, and I don't want to
maybe
say
it's like what he's seen in practice. Maybe Garrett Schrader does not look good in practice, and he cannot fathom that he's getting a chance in the game. But I was just taken aback by that.
Right, and I don't want to assume that like he's a bad teammate or something because we never hear that. We usually hear the opposite, frankly, that he is a good teammate. And I do want to give him some credit. I mean, a lot of guys wouldn't have stuck it out to this situation. The fact that he's still at Syracuse is impressive. But yeah, it was kind of a quizzical look, and I don't blame him. He probably wanted to be in the game, and as we talked about earlier in the week, he should have been in the game during that drive.
Right. All right, let's take a look at some of the defensive stuff that we saw from PFF because guess what? This defense was swarming. They were fantastic. I mean, you look at some of the stats for Rutgers in this game, they didn't move the ball at all. Really, I mean, 2.7 yards per play. 2.7. And if you thought Syracuse's offense was bad, they were getting about 4.2. So almost a yard and a half more per play for Syracuse in this game. That just shows how good this defense was. They were getting in the backfield. They sacked Noah Vedral 4 times. Number of tackles for loss in this game. Michael Jones, ACC linebacker of the week. He has himself an awesome day. But ultimately, listen, this defense can only do so much. When you hold an opponent to 17 points, you should win the football game. But when your offense is this bad, and I guess the one missing link for this defense is it still needs to get turnovers. That's if they are getting turnovers, creating some shorter fields for this team, for this offense, then maybe the scripts flip. But you cannot complain about that because you held Rutgers to 17 points. That is a really good defensive showing.
Isn't that amazing that we're here and it's early in the season, this could change, but we're saying, oh man, I wish they could get more turnovers because that's been the opposite of their issues for the past couple years now. They've gotten turnovers, but they've allowed big plays. They've struggled to make tackles in the open field. I really have been very impressed with the tackling so far. And we talked a lot in our preview pods about how Rutgers does have some big playability, and you would not have known that based on how they handled those playmakers, the Crookshanks, the Miltons of the world in the open field. And a lot of that is credit to the defensive backs and their perimeter tackling. I think Deuce Chestnut had another solid game. He gets a 69 grade on PFF. Garrett Williams left the game, of course, but had a 77 grade, which led the team on offense and defense. Of course, defense was a bulk of the top 5. I think they were the entire top 5 as they look at it now on Pro Football Focus. And the highest rated offensive player actually checked in at number 9.
Yeah, I was going to say they're the top 8 that they held.
Right, top 8, yeah, which says a lot. And the other thing that's interesting, looking at the snap count, Deuce Chestnut had the most snaps, and the second most snaps was Jason Simmons. So 2 newcomers there. Now, I know that defensive line's never going to win that category, something like that, but I still think that's a little bit interesting that they're relying on those guys so much.
Yo, absolutely. And I look at Deuce. I didn't feel like he was tested as much in this game. That's fine. That's fine. I mean, the front was so good where you didn't necessarily have the opportunity to be tested as much. And that's a good thing. I thought this Syracuse front, when you look at some of these guys who are on the top here, Cody Roscoe was fantastic in this game. Josh Black, Stephon Thompson, Caleb Okechukwu. Those are pass rushers right there. 4 pass rushers for this team. And for them to have that impact and be atop this list, that's important because the defensive line, I feel like, struggled a little bit against Ohio, left a little bit of meat on the bone there, it felt like, even though you did dominate in that game. And ultimately, when you see this team start to cause turnovers, it's going to be because this defensive line gets pressure and forces quarterbacks into making bad decisions. I think part of it was you had a veteran quarterback on the other side that knew when to take the sack and did so 4 times, which helped his team out probably and prevented a number of turnovers from occurring and ultimately probably helped Rutgers win the game by taking a couple of those sacks.
Yeah, it's so amazing because we've criticized coaching a lot this week, and that's been a lot of the theme of these podcasts is, man, the coaching just isn't getting enough out of these guys. Yet I would probably give Tony White like a A++ so far since he's joined Syracuse. I mean, how is that the
Nick
case?
Monroe, I mean, those two are unbelievable with A, how they gather personnel, and B, how they execute with it.
Right. And honestly, I mean, I don't even want to say this, but I think Tony White is a guy that if he went to a bigger school, I think he'd be successful. Like Syracuse should be worried that someone doesn't come and take him away, which is shocking because they won 1 game last year and they're off to a sluggish start this year. But when you look at just the defense and what he's been working with, how he's had to get these guys ready for a new scheme in a short amount of time last year, they handled it pretty well last year, aren't even forcing that many turnovers yet. I would think that's going to go up this year, and they're still looking really good again.
I mean, USC just fired Clay Helton, and that was the nightmare scenario a couple of years ago for Syracuse fans that, Dino's going to leave. He's going to take that USC job. Now maybe it's Tony White that's on the way out and going to USC. Listen, I'm not saying Tony White should be a head coach because there's so much more that goes into being a head coach. But
a good DC.
There are bigger. No, yes, you are 1,000% correct. There are bigger DC jobs, and Tony White might realize to himself, hey, it's not easy to recruit here. Imagine what I could do if I had 4- and 5-star guys on the defensive side. Because I think it would be pretty scary. I'm not saying he's Brett Venables quite yet, but He looks really good and has maximized the hell out of what Syracuse has on the defensive side. There's not a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball. I think they've done a really good job at developing talent.
Yeah, and that's a shout out to everyone on the staff, not just Tony White. And that's really been a theme even before Tony White got there, because you got to give some credit to Cisco and Iffy and all the
And
guys.
a lot of that's Nick Monroe.
Yeah, right. I think and he gets them too, which is half the battle, of course, is getting them to commit. I mean, look at what Deuce Chestnut did. He's a 4-star guy. He comes in, and I think he even dropped to a 3-star after Syracuse got him on some sites, which is ridiculous. But anyways, he's a 4-star guy. He comes in his first game. He looks like a playmaker. So if you're Tony White, you might be thinking, man, if I had 5 or 6 of those 4 stars or 10 or 11 of those 4 stars, I could be something.
Right. I'm thinking too, like, in terms of if Syracuse lost Tony White, obviously not good, but I feel like losing Nick Monroe potentially, it almost would feel like the Sean Lewis effect on the defensive side of the ball, where he was great at recruiting. He put together and helped develop this scheme that was running and functioning so highly. And ever since Sean Lewis has left, we've seen this Syracuse offense just fall off a cliff. He was the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach when he was at Syracuse, was fantastic with Eric Dungy, was fantastic with DeVito for that one season where we saw DeVito really shine in a reserve role. He was great with Zach Mahoney. I mean, he got Zach Mahoney to set records for single games. Just let that sink in for a little bit. You have now 2 4-star quarterbacks on your roster. You have Eric Dungy, who people want his name in the rafters. Yeah, it's Zach Mahoney that went out and set a bunch of single game records.
Right.
Like, he could do it with anyone.
This frustrates me just talking about it, because when Sean Lewis was there, he overlapped with Brian Ward, who was fired midseason one year because he was struggling. And for anyone that doesn't say coaching, or they argue coaching doesn't matter that much, this is a prime example. Like, Sean Lewis, is the talent that much worse now than when Sean Lewis was there? I guess Eric Dungy's not there, but you can make a case that Dungy
from a
wasn't even
baseline recruiting talent standpoint. The talent is probably better.
Yeah, and Sean Lewis was getting some numbers, getting some points for Syracuse on the offensive side. Brian Ward, is the talent that much different now that Tony White's there? I don't know, maybe a little bit better, maybe even a little bit worse in some areas. I mean, the linebackers are good, but Brian Ward allowed 60 points to BC sometimes, and they just ran it right up the gut against us, and it was excruciating. So now it's like we somehow never got Lewis with Tony White, or got the formula lined up right, which is even more frustrating.
All right, that's going to do it for us here on this Wednesday Locked on Syracuse. We will be back tomorrow. Some more football stuff. We'll dive into more quarterbacks too. Maybe even sneak in a little bit of basketball, because Albany right around the corner as well. Not a huge game for Syracuse, so we'll just prime you up for that one on Friday on the show. So for Tim, I'm Tyler. We will talk to all of you guys tomorrow.